death is a second away. People die every 5 minutes from a fentanyl overdose in America. There's 200 a day. It's a plane crash every day that's happening, and we're not doing anything about it, right? And so that's why we're here. The old way is out. The game's changed, the drugs changed, intervention has changed, and treatment's got to change.
This episode of Die Sober discusses sensitive topics that may be triggering to some viewers. If you are experiencing an emergency and need help, please call 911 or contact the National Suicide Hotline at 988.
For non-emergency assistance, please use us as a resource. Visit us at thefirmaddictionconsulting.com, or for more information, call us 615-210-6703. Welcome back, everyone, to the latest episode of the Die Sober podcast. Today, Zach and I are joined by our good buddy, Jason Wahler.
How you doing, brother?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for making time for us. I know you're a really busy guy.
Yes, busy.
You've got a lot going on working with Dr. Amen.
Yes.
You're state advocate for mental health.
Yes.
And substance abuse. You've got production stuff going on.
Yes.
Fill us in, man. What are you up to right now?
Man. So yeah, I am the director for Dr. Darren and Amen's Foundation. I am one of the ambassadors for A-List Health, which is A-List Health, which is one of the first ever JCO accredited at-home treatment providers. Also a brand ambassador for SoberSure, the first ever transdermal alcohol monitoring detection band, which I'm really excited about. And then do a ton of advocacy work within the state of Tennessee. Right now, where I met you guys at is You Are Not Alone, the project that we did. That was regarding substance abuse. Now we're doing a whole nother one regarding mental health. And so obviously just really, dedicated my life to raising awareness towards substance abuse and mental health and trying to make a difference and be a beacon of hope for those that are lost, man.
Well, we definitely have a lot of people that are lost. And just from knowing you personally and watching you professionally, you've definitely touched a lot of people with your work.
I appreciate it. No, it's amazing how everything comes full circle, and how your greatest deficits can become your greatest assets. And I think like all three of us here, we shouldn't be here. But I personally, for me, I believe the man up above kept me around to do the work that we're doing. And, there's a lot of power by expressing vulnerability. It creates humility. And when you can open up and you can share what's really going on and what's happened, it creates that connectivity and a sense of safety with other people. And more that needs to be out there. There's a lot of people hurting, as we all know, addiction is the leading cause of death in America for 50-year-old individuals and younger. You look at mental health, everything is just not it's on a trend upward, which is not good. Suicides, depression, anxiety, overdoses. And so something's got to be done. Systemic change starts by conversation, and it's getting more people linked up and linking arms together.
Yeah. Well, when we sat down for your last production, the first one, You Were Not Alone.
Yeah.
I remember one of the things that we went back and forth about is the stigma that keeps people quiet, especially early on.
Yeah.
I don't know something's wrong with me. I just don't feel good.
Yeah.
I've got anxiety, I've got depression. I may have co-occurring mental disorder. And I know from what you've said, you had some struggles like that early on.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested in knowing from you, when did that start and how did it start?
It's a great question. And so it's after all the years of looking at my past and my history, for many, many years, I was actually really able to pinpoint where I started struggling. And I even say that I struggled with addiction or alcoholism way before I ever picked up the drink or the drug. Not only am I Cherokee, German, and Irish, and, I should have had a stamp on the womb when I came out, said, do not give this guy anything to use. But the pre-genetic disposition was there, but I struggled severely with OCD. And so I can look back when I was 12, 13 years old. I don't know where the OCD came from at that time. I do now. But because there was no traumatic events, I didn't have anything that would really have initiated or caused that. But at 12, 13 years old, I would wash my hands till they'd bleed. I mean, I was afraid of germs. And so I would literally, at night, I'd have to wear neoprene gloves with Neosporin in them. But what was crazy is I was living this double life at the age of 12, 13 years old. Because on the outside, I was, perceived as a popular kid, was good at sports, athletic, had a girlfriend, and it was kind of like had this idyllic life. But behind closed doors, it was very different, right? And so I was living this double life while my parents, so on top of that, very supportive family, mom and dad were very supportive, took me to psychologists, took me to therapist, and did everything they could. Keep in mind, this is the, mid to late 90s, right? So it's a totally different landscape that we're in. And imagine back then trying to be 12 or 13, express what's going on. It's like, I just show them my hands and it's like, we explain high level, but at 12 or 13, I didn't know how to explain like what my thoughts and my feelings, and I did the best I could. Got put on medication, helped mitigate the symptoms, but never ended up dealing with the underlying issues. And lo and behold, that was just the beginning to the process for me. Because then when I was introduced to alcohol, which is funny because alcohol, as much as I loved it, I was actually terrified of it the first couple of times. I even pretended getting drunk with friends because I just didn't want to have that feeling. But once I committed, I don't even remember the first time I actually got like hammered. I remember the first time I was around beers and I was like pouring them over my shoulder. Yeah. And like, yeah, guys, this is great. And there's a whole story there that happened with them. I'm like, wow. But where was I going with that? But that's what ended up leading to the domino effect. When I started to drink, I'm like, wow, this just really, this alleviated everything. This quieted the mind. And I'm like, who needs medication, man? This is something that it really takes the edge off.
Right. And so you as a young kid, 12, 13, you begin medication therapy for OCD.
Yeah.
Right. And then alcohol picks up. The great anesthetic, right?
Yep.
So what was that like? Were your symptoms, was the wound alleviated once you started drinking?
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, I mean, again, is obviously when because I was at 15, 16 years old, it wasn't like I was drinking daily. It was more of the weekend stuff. But when that anxiety, the social anxiety, the repercussions and the things that come from OCD, obviously were quieted when I would drink. And so it would suppress a lot of that stuff. And so I'd feel like I was a totally different person, especially come the weekend. Mm-hmm. And as we know, addiction's primary, it's chronic and it's progressive. Right. And so, I mean, it wasn't long because from 15, 16 to 17 to 18, I mean, I started getting bad, within just a couple of years. I mean, it really started to take off where I was saying I was drinking on the weekends. In my senior year, I was drinking throughout the week. And then it just continued to get worse. And then obviously I started struggling with the law, and then you start introducing other substances and you start mismatching but also being in the spot that I was at 18 years old too. I was in the most impressionable time of my life, and the most influential. And then you get thrown onto a TV show that had tremendous success, and I mean, literally at 18, 19 years old, we were being paid to party and travel the world. It's like, all your friends most of them are looking just for fake IDs. And you're like, dude, come on, let's go. We'll show you what's up. And so that really just kind of changed everything. And so, I thought I was invincible for a while. And so, I mean, I never really took a hard look at really what those underlying issues were. Even when I'd go to treatment, I mean, cause I went to 12 different treatment centers from Florida to Hawaii, every state in between, did my rounds. The reason why I couldn't ever, grab a hold of it too, is I always say addiction is a disease of denial. And I just was never willing to get open or honest or admit that I really had a problem, especially back then, just when I was so far gone from it. When you go into these places, it's like, dude, I'm like 18, I'm 19, I'm 20, I'm 20. I'm like, dude, everybody goes through this. I'm just I'm on a platform, or, I'm being exposed. I'm under a microscope, and it's, there's, again, total denial around all this, but I'm like, everybody goes through this. Clearly I can look back today and be like, dude, being arrested 4 times in 6 months in 4 different states is not normal. Like, just the things that I'd go through.
That's pretty good.
And add one country in there too. And so it was just the dominoes of all those things, but just, and again, is on the flip side too, having the most loving, caring, supportive family. I think it's important to address so too, is wherever there's an alcoholic or an addict, there's a codependent, and sometimes they're just as sick, if not sicker. And my parents were a part of that process where they were literally loving me to death. They kept throwing pillows when I should have fallen. And there was just this dynamic that, didn't allow me to get to a place. But my addiction, to summarize my use, it was like, look, at first it was fun. It became a lifestyle, and then it became a way of survival. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, it really just, that's the gist of everything. Cause it went from loving surfing, skateboarding, snowboarding, playing baseball, being out there and doing that, to the last days of being completely isolated. I mean, I'd have parties at my house where I'd be in the back room by myself, and people are in the living room or in the, out front, whatever it would be. And then ultimately it took me to a place of not contemplating, but attempting suicide, because it's like, I have at least what I was perceived and what I was told of, I have everything that life says is amazing. You have money, notoriety, access, whatever it may be. And like, dude, I don't even want to live, And so that's where it took me. And again, there's obviously the positive side of where I'm at today, but addiction just robs you, mental health for me too. Right. And I mean, that's what I've learned over this journey is how much mental health really played a part into this. It's so co-occurring and, it's like, was it the chicken or the egg first? And it's like, I got the genes and I had these mental health issues. So they go hand in hand, but I just did not know how to communicate or effectively share like what was really going on. And again, like I said, the honesty, the willingness to take direction, all that stuff plays a big part in it. And all those things that I said that I didn't do obviously are a big part of what I do now. And that's, how I entered into recovery was the complete opposite of what I was doing because the best of my decision making kept getting me back to those same places.
Right. So how long would you say that you struggled from, I think I've got a problem, my life's not going well, it doesn't feel good, even given money, access, notoriety, all that, life doesn't feel good. How long did that struggle last for you before you got into lasting sobriety?
Yeah, I mean, like really looking at it, even though there was times that were fun, right? Mm-hmm. The whole time was miserable. I mean, like there was like, even though, there's these sometimes these highs, but like if you look back from when I was young, like the numbing and all that stuff, it was just a Band-Aid on the situation, right? So it's like the underlying issues were never dealt with. And so it's like, if I really look at it that whole time, it's like, from the substance abuse side, because I had an amazing life. Like, I mean, like I said, I look back and like my childhood was amazing. And I look at all the stuff that I was able to do. And I mean, love, like life is all about the love you have, the memories you create and, the legacy you leave behind. And I was able to be a part of that process through my own family at a young age going through there. But I look at, from the addiction standpoint, like I'd say maybe like if I were to really compartmentalize it, I'd say that first year and a half was fun. And then it started to get iffy. And then, I'd say probably by year 2.5 is when it was like, it started to really change into, life started to get like, I couldn't survive without it. Right. And then it just kept progressively getting worse.
Yeah. Do you look back at your time on camera and ever feel like you especially, or anybody else, did that show exploit you guys in the way like, hey, we're going to pay you to party. We're going to pay you to act wild.
Yeah, I mean, the show, obviously it created a character, right? And it's like, I just did an interview a little while ago and I think it was, because I never really went back and watched the show and I never did until recently when Netflix picked it back up and then we just watched a couple episodes and I was able to actually like really identify. I was like, wow, like one is, I don't know how it was so entertaining to people, but two is like, I was like, wow, I could really see how sick I was. You know what I mean? Like I could really see, and that's like the benefit of the show is having like your senior year documented, right? And then going into, your 19, 20, 21 and those ages of your life where most people don't have that time frame documented and to go back and see it's like, it was just a big eye opener. I'm like, God, now that I have the knowledge and the education that I do today to be able to look back and be like, dude, you were really sick, and that's like, cause it was a question to me is something along the lines of like, what was it like going through that process? And it's like, when I can look back and see is like, dude, that person was suffering,
Well, what I'm wondering too, what I'm thinking about is, you talked about when you were younger, right? And kind of living this double life, right? Like during the week, like you're the dude sleeping in the latex gloves with Neosporin. I can relate to that personally. Our timelines on that, I suffered horribly from OCD and as around like 10, 11, 12, and then it just continued to get worse until a certain point. But nonetheless, like you have this double life, right? But at the same time, you go to school, like you're the popular kid, no one knows. When you're going through the show, like the one thing you said was it's almost like, at times there's like a persona and an ego, right? So how is it like on the back end coming off of the show? Like, you're starting to see things that are like a little bit more problematic now. How difficult is it to actually separate from the, quote unquote persona to the authentic you?
It was really challenging. I mean, I always came up with the saying that for so long I had an overinflated ego with an underestimated sense of self-worth, right? And so like, to be able to separate and disconnect from it, I really had to remove myself from my environment, and I had to really go and analyze that. Cause there was a moment of clarity too, man. Like I said, I was intervened on multiple times. I mean, there were so many, whether I was appeasing courts, girlfriend, whatever it was, parents, there were so many different times. And the moment of clarity for me though was when I was sitting in a therapy office with my family yet again, And I've never seen my dad break down before in his life, besides when his mom had passed away. And there was, I don't know what was different about this time, but, cause we've been in there similar situations many times. And, this is after the suicide, after all this stuff had gone on, and you have to remember, just completely just ready to check out. And he just looked over and he just said, look, Mom and I are struggling. The whole family's struggling. We're suffering. We literally are lying in bed, like two planks of wood waiting for the phone call that you're dead. Mm-hmm. And when he said that, there was just this moment where I'm like, whoa, like literally a moment of clarity, like a light that came on. And I was like, dude, I don't care enough about myself right now, but I care enough about you guys to give this one last shot. And that was like July 23rd, 2010 is when I went back out to treatment again. And that's really where I would say my journey to recovery started. It was crazy.
That gift of desperation. Yeah. That's the moment that it takes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't, a lot of times, like in our work, we have to, families are saying, hey, don't you understand, if you keep using A, B, or C, fentanyl, crack, heroin, you keep drinking to oblivion, you're going to die. Yeah. Aren't you scared of that? And the answer is no. Guys like us three, we're not scared of that. We're scared to live, and that's that when you get to look back and go, wait, this is the moment. This is the moment that things change for me.
I think it's on that point, though. It's even to your point, just to identify the illness behind it. Like, there's no such thing as recreational use of heroin or shooting meth or drinking a bottle of vodka a day. You know, I mean, like, so when you look at like from the outside and people are judging, looking on the inside, it's like, again, addiction doesn't dictate who we are, but it doesn't justify our actions, right? But I want to make that clear. But when people are seeing people that are struggling, just having an understanding, like that way of life it's a miserable existence. Like when we were 9-10 years old, growing up, when most people are, all of us, when you want to be a firefighter, you want to be a police officer, you wanted to be a baseball player, a football player, like none of us are like, dude, I can't wait to be a crack addict. Like, it's not exactly. Like it's not what's in the card of it. And so I think, again, is there's ownership and understanding that, because it's with our disease, it's very action oriented and there's a lot of ownership and accountability that can be had. But when somebody's actively in the disease, you know what I mean? They lose the right to make their own decisions, basically. I mean, they're literally not functioning correctly from a neurological standpoint.
And I think, to your point, I think that's why mental health issues and specifically substance use issues, we don't get as much empathy from people outside of our circle, because we can be perceived to have a choice. Yeah. And it was certainly true for me. It sounds like you guys and most of the people that we interact with, at some point they've lost the power of choice. So a lot of our work and a lot of your work too, what we want to do is raise the floor to reach feet instead of allow someone plummet to the bottom. Yeah. Especially given the fentanyl epidemic.
The landscape is different this day and age too, not condoning for substance use or things like that, but it's like, it's just different. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, there was overdoses from heroin. There was people dying from cocaine and all this different stuff, but not at the rate they are today. The landscape is completely different, and it's scary. I mean, you look at fentanyl, I mean, it's laced in everything. I mean, whether it's pressed pills to whether it's in your heroin, whether it's in your meth, whether it's in your coke, whether it's in your marijuana. I mean, it's everywhere, and it's the landscape's changed. That's really what it comes down to.
And mental health, I don't know. I'm interested in your feedback here. Mental health statistics are up everywhere. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, suicide, depression, anxiety, PTSD. Are those numbers up because there's actually more incidences across our country, or are we doing a better job of identifying? Are more people coming out and saying and identifying as, yes, I've got anxiety. Yes, I've got depression.
I think that's I think it's both. I think that now that because there's been a lot of headway to a lot of people to open up and talk and to seek help and guidance. But I also think the world we live in today is a contributor to people struggling and suffering more. So I mean, I would say both. I think it's a two-pronged approach there. I'd be curious, what is your thoughts on that?
I think there's two sides of that coin for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Because especially now too, like, what's everybody got? iPhones. What's everyone got on their iPhones? Social, Instagram, TikTok, bunch of short form content. We scroll, we compare, we analyze, and at the same time too, like the other side of the coin is like you do get people that have bigger platforms that get loud and vocal about this kind of stuff, about recovery, about mental health issues, and using the platform to not just like announce for themselves, but to like also announce like there's solutions for both of these things out there. So, you know, there's, once again, it's two sides of the coin because the landscape's different. You know, 20 years ago, when I was 14 years old in, you know, what, 8th, 9th grade, whatever it is, we didn't have, you know, essentially children eating pressed Percocets and Xanax and everything else.
Yeah.
Right? Like you were kind of the wild card if you had like 2 joints on a weekend.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? So it's once again, like everything kind of ebbs and flows in accordance like with the landscape and everything else with it. And there really is two sides of that coin. So I'm in agreement with you. I think it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B.
Yeah. I mean, because you look at, like, you just hit the nail on the head, though. I think if you look at average age of first time use, you know, I mean, you look at the average age of first time use across the United States. I mean, at 11 and a half years old, like you were saying, like even in high school, dude, I'm just saying freshman, sophomore year, like people were maybe, this was like Southern California, Laguna's a very artsy, like, I mean, maybe smoking weed here and there, you know what I mean? But like, not like you're saying, you know, doing the fentanyl, taking perks, doing, you know, I mean, it's different today. I mean, but I think it's a great point though. So I think obviously more awareness creates, you know, more people coming out about it. But I also think the landscape and the environment we live in, there's a lot more pressure, you know, we live in a false reality too, dude. I mean, it's like, there's so much that is exposed. I mean, the amount of information that we receive or see in a day today is thousands and thousands of times more than what we did just years ago. You know what I mean? So it's overwhelming, overstimulating. So I mean, there's 2 columns to it. I totally agree.
You work a lot in the state of Tennessee. We've got no shortage of hurting children here. You know, what are you seeing? And like you just said, 11 and a half years old is the average start of use for kids in America.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I think when you look at it, I mean, I think being able to incorporate and get into the school systems and insert education would be imperative. I mean, especially with the environment that we're in today, I think that the time has come for something like that. But again, as I think there has to be more work done on getting the buy-in from the parents and the families. And that's where I think us, like even just this conversation now and advocacy, and doing, you know, lunch and learn, speaking, you know, seminars, and just bringing the awareness to this to really bring to light. And I think that's happening. I mean, you're seeing the statistics and you're seeing things come out where people are much more inclined to listen now, because now it's you know, the people that are like, oh, it never can happen to me. It's whether it's their friends or it is happening to them, I think are a lot more open to hearing and learning that. And so I think we're on the right direction. Obviously a lot more needs to be done. And there's so much to be done, and we got a big uphill battle to climb, but I'm in complete agreement that I think if we, you know, can incorporate the prevention, we can incorporate education, you know, it allows for solution. And I think, look, that's the thing is if somebody does not drink or use by the age of 21, they have a 90% chance of never struggling with addiction. I mean, I would be curious to how many parents or people understand that or have just heard that statistic, just from an informative area. So, I mean, just because my kids living under my roof, you know, until they're 18, there's going to be a 0 tolerance policy because I'm trying to save them from what I went through. You know what I mean? At 21, they can do it. They can, you know, that would be my communication that I have with them. But it's understanding that if I can save my kids, which I know, you know, they are pre-genetically disposed to it, and they probably, one of them's probably got the gene, you know, and if I can help them in any way possible, just even that simple thing of just understanding like, hey, this is what we have in our family, and being able to provide that and to know if they can make it past that, like what a great statistic. I mean, a 90% chance, you know.
I'd take 90% for my son. I know that.
Yeah.
You know, I think I'd be right there in line. I mean, the right before you said the comparison, that was in my ADD squirrels were going off, but the way social media works with kids, the comparisons, life's way tougher today than it was. I'm 46. You guys are a little bit younger than me. So mid 90s, you know, like I had a classroom of 8 kids, right? And I still murdered myself with comparisons to the other 6 boys. Yeah. You know, so exponentially more difficult life is today for our children.
I can't even imagine it, dude. Like, it was funny. We were talking about just the impact of social media and just different things that come from that. And back when our shows was on, there was blogs, right? There was no social media and stuff. And I remember like reading comments and there were some great ones that make you feel great. And then there were some that were not so great. And you're like, wow, that really, that pulls on you. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, I got an old school dose of what it was like to have perception and in, this day and age, you don't have to be known to be targeted. Right. So back then it was like people know you, so they feel like they can say stuff about you. In this day and age with social media, you don't have to be a known person to be targeted.
Right.
And that's the catch too. It's really like as soon as the child's old enough to get a phone, it becomes almost impossible to police.
Yeah.
And to me, like that's where like these family level emotional check-ins around just mental health and having honest, transparent communication just becomes invaluable.
Yeah.
Right. Because without that, I don't know what Caden's thinking.
Yeah.
Right? He's 13 years old. Like he's at that age.
Well, it's what you instill though. I think like for my daughter who's only 7, I mean, for us there's consistency and structure creates safety. Right. And so at a very young age, I always just instilled getting on literally my hands and knees and being able to communicate with her, especially whether something was going really good or something was going wrong, just to be at that same eye level and to start to establish that trust, because for those conversations that do come later. And so like we do gratitude lists together. Like, I mean, literally when she was 4 or 5 years old, we started doing them. She loved lighting the candles and like, we just made like a thing of it. You know what I mean? But she started incorporating gratitude and prayer and just being able to talk. And like when something happens, knowing that she has a safe place to come to, right? And so it's amazing to see how that has been beneficial within the dynamic of our household. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing. I had me and my wife just had one of those like kind of like tearjerker moments where my daughter is actually journals already at 7 and she has a prayer sheet. We never told her to. So Monday she has like her prayers written out. Tuesday she has her prayers written out. And I'm just like, just definitely, I'm sure it's my kid, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like just looking at where it's at, but it's like instilling that because I think as parents, you're right. I mean, schools obviously see our kids more than we do, right? But as parents, we have that opportunity to really instill those morals and those values and that sense of safety and communication and connectivity. And it's the intentionality, and it's not easy. You know what I mean? It takes effort and work to put that in, but that's one of the things that we hold on a high priority is establishing that place, because when something does happen, we want them to be able to come and communicate with us and to be able to have that check-in. And, it's like I look back, I had great parents. They loved and supported, but I didn't have we'd never established what we're doing now. You know what I mean? It was kind of like they would be there if we wanted to talk, but it wasn't like this intentional thing. And it's not about being weak. It's just the times have changed, man. You know what I mean? It's like we weren't dealing with this stuff that we were dealing with today. It's just, it's different. So I love that you bring that up around creating that. I think, it's great to have that in the schools, but right now parents can start themselves. You know what I mean? And so the more that we can educate and inform them, it creates that opportunity for us to have that, because as much as I want my daughter to be able to talk to a teacher or a principal, I want her to come talk to me. Yeah. And so, but again, on the flip side, there's quite a few kids that don't have a safe environment, right? Exactly. And so again, there's two sides to it though. But I think for those people that are out there that have concern and have the knowledge and the wherewithal, start instilling that with your kids. And again, is on the side that where there's kids that don't, yes, like there needs to be that movement within the schools.
You bring up a couple of really cool points with how we deliver in the home to our children. And it doesn't matter how we got there, right? Like growing up, I was communicated to a lot, but I didn't feel empowered to communicate back. Yep. And so that was the times, my parents got training from their parents from World War II era people, so it was more like, hey, children should be seen, not heard, not go do what you're supposed to do, right? You don't get a high five for doing your job. You just get to do it again.
Yeah. You get to say, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thanks. Yeah. We'll do it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
But that's really informed how a lot of people in my generation, maybe mine to y'all's, 46, well, you guys are
37,
34. So 10-year gap. So probably not too far off. A lot of parents, our era, mine to y'all's, could seem a little bit softer, and I'm cool with it. I'm not all the way cool with the whole gentle parenting thing.
Yeah.
When kids are throwing biscuits from the high chair. But there is a whole new level of communication that our era parents take part in, and try to foster in the home. And I think that to me is the first line of defense. You're dead on it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's important that we instill discipline, it's for sure. But again, is that safe place to go to provide that guidance, insight, and direction for them.
Yeah.
I have a question just in regards to, going back to the, to our children, right? Be curious to know from either one of you, just what is your perspective on signs and symptoms to watch out for, especially at, a young age?
So this is what I look for personally. I look for extremes, I look for compulsions, and I look for obsessions, right? Because even if in some of those I draw parallels from my own childhood, in some of those I draw parallels just from like the families that I've worked with and some of the families you've worked with as well. Because for example, right, we know all about the mental obsession, the phenomenon of craving. We know we're operating with addiction. We know we're operating with extremes. We know we're operating with compulsions, and we know we're operating in obsessions. Does that mean just because you see that in a child, it always translates to substance use disorder, alcohol use disorder? No, but like it could be something to keep a thumbprint on. So, for instance, my kid plays football, loves football, right? What I watch for is it all he's focused on and obsessing on in an unhealthy way for a 13-year-old child, right? We're not talking about, executive level, CEOs and stuff like that who have to be hyper focused on one thing and one thing only. What I'm looking for with him is, despite this love of football, despite how bad he wants to succeed and how much he's practicing and how much he's trying, is he still have a well-rounded base of interests? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. No, it's a great way to look at it for sure. And I think just on top of whether it's the extremes or the overly, the compulsiveness towards something, I even think, signs and symptoms of isolation, change in behavior.
Yes.
Just the depression, obviously, anxiety, friends. I think you are a product of your environment. And so I think that's an easy thing to be able to look at when you're, assessing just who they're hanging out with and who they're associating with is another thing. What are your thoughts on that?
I like, you guys are right on point, but for me, what's poignant that I've been really putting a pulse on lately is emotional regulation.
Yeah. Can
this young person regulate their emotions reasonably? Right. Sometimes I don't regulate my emotions reasonably. We all have struggles. How well do they tolerate stress? How well do they tolerate change of environments, change of activities?
What age are you looking at that for?
I was going to say, because that is for sure on a spectrum based on age, right?
Well, you started at 13, so I'm just kind of basing it there.
I'm just cool because I just want to clarify, because I think also kids, parents are like, well, my 7, 8 year old's doing that now, So I think it's good as they start to mature and get into, at least the teenage, right?
Yeah. I think things get really tough for teenagers given hormones. And then the other side to me is also social media. Right? You have hormones that are driven, hormones that drive behaviors, but then you have these complicating external factors too. So I think, from my generation to this one, so like we've said, it's a totally different world. Yeah. And I think the signs and symptoms and behaviors that we look for got to be a little bit different given the times.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So how does your work today, you're a busy man. How is your work today informed by your own recovery experience and what's worked for you, including mental health? You mentioned OCD as a child and got into recovery. Now you have a completely full life, right? And from what I know about you, it's built on recovery.
It is. I mean, I think the first thing is, my life is completely transformed because of recovery. I mean, even me being out here in Tennessee, I would never have been in a place mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually to be able to move across the country with a little family if I was not sober, right? I mean, or in a mentally or physically strong state of mind either. So that alone is a testament. And to be able to have the opportunity to try to provide a better life for my family, to make those decisions, those informed and educated decisions on the things that we do, right? Because it wasn't like we were moving across the city, it was like we were moving across the country. And that was the first, born and raised there. It's like all I knew was Orange County in Southern California. But, going into just from a personal standpoint into my professional standpoint is a lot of my history and a lot of the things that I've gone through have been able to be my biggest, let me say that again. It's like, I look back, like I stated earlier today, that like my greatest deficits can become your greatest assets. Right. And so I look at everything that I went through was not wasted, because it allows me to grow and to have a future within that. And so it's amazing to see how when I initially got sober, how my life, removed myself from the entertainment industry, started working in recovery, had amazing mentors and advocates. So when I was in that space, got really informed and really educated about it. Because, by entrenching and immersing myself into that, I got to know myself better. And as I've grown and through that recovery process, and to see my own journey and continue to do the work, still till today, I see a therapist on a weekly basis. We could talk about the program, but I still do stuff to constantly stay involved within my program, because there's always room for growth. Right. And so, but through that journey, it allowed me to like, hey, look, I was in the recovery space and did stuff within the substance abuse field for over 10 years. And, I'm kind of wanting to look more towards the mental health, because as my journey's evolved, I'm really starting to see how much more my mental health was impacted. And that's what kind of got me connected with Dr. Amen. But I still have, one foot on the boat, one foot on the dock when it comes to recovery. So I do this stuff with A-List and, being a part of preventative measures with Sober Sure. And so it's like my whole life was like on a pottery wheel, being shaped for this and being involved in things that are all in line with what I hope to, or what I believe can really instill and make a difference. Right. And so it's been an awesome journey to see how this thing has taken shape, but it's also my relationship with God has really been a huge piece, because I've really instilled and turned things over. And when I really let go and let God and do what I need to do, it's amazing how much things have started to just continue to open, and how much easier and softer it is when I just release control. And I never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing today. I look back and it's such a trip, but I have so much gratitude towards that. And it's taught me a whole new way of life. Again, you heard me say earlier too, is that structure and consistency creates safety. I think that anybody can thrive on that, whether they struggle with addiction or not, because that instills purpose, passion, and motivation. And every morning I have my morning routine of the gratitude list, the 3 things I'm grateful for, not only what, but why. I read my daily devotional. I read a piece out of the Bible, and then I go to the gym, and that's how I start my morning. And it's consistent. Am I always 100% perfect? No, but I have that in order and in play. And then I pray multiple times throughout the day. I'm talking about 15 different times before I came here. Just God speak through me, whatever it's supposed to be. And I incorporate that in my life. And then at the end of the day, to the best of my ability, when I get home, I do an inventory of not only the things that I did that I did not do well, where I need to make amends, and if there's things I've fallen short on, but also the things that I did do well, because I think we're always so hard on ourselves. So that way, when I put my head to the pillow, my day's over. I have a completely fresh start tomorrow. Right. And so like when I can constantly stay on top of that, and when that's in play, it serves me really, really well. But having that in order also allows me to be the best dad, to be the best friend, to be the best husband, and so on. And so it's like, for me, I get to have this choice today to live this life that is in order, right? And it's an action-oriented thing. And it's today I do have a choice, right? When you're actively in addiction, I think you do lose the right to make your own decisions. But today I have the decisions to stay on that path, right? Of doing what I need to do, or am I going to start to deviate? Because relapse was a part of my story as well. And after having 5 years of sobriety, I fell off, and it was one of those things where everything that I did to get to where I was at, I stopped doing. And so I can look back. For me personally, I don't think relapse is a part of recovery. I think it's a lack thereof, because I can actually look back and see where everything fell off. And I'm like, dude, that was totally, what's predictable is preventable. And I saw all that. And so for me now, it's like, I have the choice on a daily basis to do what I need to do for myself. And those, like the majority of that list is pretty damn non-negotiable. And my wife supports it, my family supports it. And because I'm a better version of myself.
Right. I love the bulletproof mornings when I'm feeling my best and operating at my best. And the men that I trust, when we're operating at our best, you do the same thing. Solitude, gratitude, take care of our physical plant.
Yeah.
The rest of the day is easy.
Yeah.
Right. I'm already being honest with myself. That means I can give honesty away. Yeah. I'm hardworking. I'm already engaged. And ultimately I'm engaged in my own success so that I can give that away to my little boy.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the other thing too, though, is even more than the whole speaking component to our kids is they watch.
Yes. I can absolutely back that. I had a really cool experience that was God given to me through recovery the other day. Is Caden, same one, the 13-year-old, he came up to me out of nowhere and he's like, because he knows all about prayer and everything else like that. And he's actively engaged in that. But he came up to me the other morning and goes, "Hey, what were you doing at the table?" And I was like, "Oh, I was meditating." And he's like, "Can you tell me about that?" And we had like this conversation about meditation. And then fast forward yesterday morning, I went to like crack his door open because he's on summer break. And I was just going to be like, "See, dude, I'm taking off." And he's sitting there just, this is cool, man. Yeah. This is really cool. But if there's one thing that addicts and alcoholics like, and I like, especially about recovery, is more. Like there's no ceiling to any of this. Right. Like when we have like these bulletproof mornings, what it does for me, and I'm sure y'all's experience is the same, is I get more faith, I get more trust, I get more discipline, I get more sustainability, I get more connection, I get more effective, more useful, more purpose, I get more. And it becomes, like it kind of becomes addicting in itself. Yeah. Because there's no glass ceiling to this.
Correct. No, it's so true. And the other thing too, is even for me is incorporating therapy. That's the thing that that's on a weekly basis, that I still see a therapist to be able to just go through that process too, though. And it's just staying on top of that. There's obviously other meetings and other things that I participate in, church and stuff that is a part of my routine as well. Obviously it's not a daily thing as far as some of those meetings go, and church and things like that. But I've found that structure and what works for me. But that whole piece, by taking those simple measures, has allowed me the life that I have today, from personal to family to professional, and it's been a one hell of a ride. You know what I mean? I look back and I go through. I wouldn't change anything. You know what I mean? Because I'm really happy and grateful for where I'm at. But I don't think I would want to do it again.
Same.
And because it's I don't know, it's just a breath of fresh air, and just so grateful, to God and to the family and to the support of friends and stuff, just for never giving up, because I definitely thought there was multiple times that was the end.
Yeah. I think the way I've watched you continue to give of your time, give of your energy, I'm making this story up, but you seem so grateful for the opportunities that you were given. So it's like mission focused for you to continue to give.
Yeah. No, there's nothing more gratifying than giving back and not looking for anything in return. I really, as cheesy as this may seem, but I try to live that mantra just on a daily basis, like is do something nice for somebody and don't get caught, right? Like just don't do it for glory, you know what I mean? But do it just out of pure giving back. And it's amazing when you do something nice for somebody and you don't have any expectation or anything in return, and just to see how it brightens up their day. Because so many people did it for me.
Yeah. As an advocate for mental health and substance use, you're certainly a busy guy. Can you tell us what you're currently working on right now?
Yeah. So running with the foundation with Dr. Amen has been incredible. Daniel is, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Amen or not.
He's my favorite Instagram account.
So I love that dude. The brain doc. But the foundation's primary three pillars is around research, education, and scholarships. And so we're really making headway in there. We have over 50 research projects that have been conducted. We currently have 20 in motion right now, 10 that I'm very, very excited about. 2 that they're actually trying to push down the road for potentially one day to be able to get FDA approval to be able to utilize SPECT imaging to help diagnose mental health issues. The educational arm is Daniel's created a ton of different, I mean, anything from Amen universities to his 12, New York Times bestselling books to the research and the white papers that he's created. He's been able to create a ton of curriculum. And so we partnered with a lot of amazing organizations. We actually just did a whole event with Dr. Oz and their organization where we did this ANTS program, the Automatic Negative Thoughts program, built the curriculum, gave it to Health Corps, and a lot of them to incorporate it in Southern California. They've had 30 boots on the ground, incorporating it at schools, and it already has impacted over 1,500 students, and we're continuing to grow that. And we actually are building a new happiness challenge curriculum that we're going to build out and put out. And then our scholarships provides individuals that don't have the means or the resources to get comprehensive assessments, brain scans, diagnosis, and treatment plans for free. So that's been amazing. I really oversee the whole process with that, work hand in hand with him, and giving back to those that are needing that. And then with A-List, I love the work that we do there. A-List is, like I stated earlier, the first ever JCAHO accredited at-home treatment provider. So we primarily work with, C-level executives, athletes, entertainers, people that don't want to go into a brick and mortar facility, more for anonymity purposes, or they're just wanting the discretionary component that's behind that. But treatment is brought to you, all the way from ASAM certified doctors, all the way down to nutritionists, is brought to the comfort of your own home, which is incredible. And again, the transdermal, sober sure, sober safe, sober tech. I'm really excited about that just because it's a new and innovative way to monitor alcohol for individuals, whether they're in treatment, whether they're coming out of treatment. Again, I even like it further, which I was just talking to them this morning on my way over here, is for teen drivers, right? If my kid was, again, not something that they'd have to wear every single day, but if my daughter was wanting to go out on, Friday night, Saturday night, and she was 16, 17 years old and want to go out until midnight, you want to drive your car, for sure, you just got to wear this band, and just because it's GPS tracking, it's 24/7 alcohol monitoring and band removal notifications. It's from a safety measure, right? And I mean, it's one of those things where I think we can really advocate. Nobody should want to encourage drinking and driving. I mean, nobody should be doing it this day and age. It's just a different, again, don't support drinking and driving, but I mean, just for kids, you know what I mean? Just to have that ability and that assurance that they're safe. So really excited about that. And then we've just relaunched the You Are Not Alone campaign, which we started shooting last week, which we'll be shooting for the next 6 months to a year, which is around mental health. And so that's basically bringing a bunch of like-minded people together, all walks of life, from athletes, entertainers, professionals, people that have lived experiences, sharing their experience, strength, and hope, but providing insight and education, for like, what is mental health? How do I know I struggle with mental health? What are the signs and symptoms? What are the things that I can do to help combat it? Where do I turn? So it's just a very informative, digestible, and easy thing that people can go to gain more knowledge and education around that. Then outside of that, man, I spend as much time as I possibly can with my family. That's really where everything comes down to, is my wife and my 2 kids.
And you must need like a 30-hour day to do a quarter of that.
I got a lot of good help.
Well, you must, man.
Yeah.
Sitting down with you has been amazing. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
From the mental health communities and the substance use communities, I want to say thank you from all of us, because you're a true advocate. I'm just going to sit back and keep eating popcorn and watch you help people.
I appreciate it, man. I thank you guys for having me. I appreciate the work you guys are doing. I mean, it's individuals like you that make the difference, and we're stronger together, and just very grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you. Intervention has changed, and treatment's got to change.